Good morning. It's always a great day here on Undisputed when we get to open this show talking Dallas Cowboys. Last night, Jerry Jones dropped a controversial little bombshell on the National Football League, and I cannot wait to debate this news with my partner, Shannon Sharp, who comes to us live now from way up there in Bel Air in his cowboy-hating stronghold. Great morning to you, Shannon Sharp.
Good morning, Skip. I want you to know, Fox and FS1 has made this going to be making this very difficult for me to travel my 1.5 miles to the studio because the cameras they've installed are top of the line. I just roll out of bed, flip a switch, and come down and start debating Skip Bayless. So they're making it very, very difficult for me to come back to the studio, even though I only drive 1.5 miles.
I just go along for the ride on this show. I do all the heavy lifting. This man is way up there in his palatial estate, rolling out of bed, doing Undisputed. Way to go, Shannon Sharp. So, that said, let's get right to it. The Cowboys have signed Aldon Smith. 1-year deal, $2 million base, $2 million in sack incentives. Aldon Smith will be 31 years of age come September. Originally, he was the 7th overall pick in the National Football League, and for his first 4 years for the 49ers, he was as dominating a pass rusher as there was in this league. But Aldon Smith has not played a single game since November 15th of 2015. Why? Because of multiple suspensions for violating the NFL substance abuse policy and its personal conduct policy. We're talking about DUIs, one involving hit and run. We're talking about weapons charges. We're talking about multiple domestic violence issues. We're talking about multiple rehab stints. But our very own Jay Glazer has been involved in Aldon Smith's latest recovery program. And Jay said last night via tweet that Aldon Smith has been clean and sober for the last 9 months. And now I'm still quoting Jay here. And that it's incredible how much he has turned his life around. So Aldon Smith is now filed for reinstatement into the National Football League. And I ask you, Mr. Sharp, Pro Football Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Will this gamble pay off for Jerry Jones?
Skip, before I address the football side of this, let me first start by saying, hopefully, Aldon Smith has cleaned up that side of his life. Hopefully, he has chased these demons away because, if you look at it, his first 2 years, he had 33, if I'm not mistaken, 33 and a half sacks, which was the second most since the sack became an official stat in 1982 behind Reggie White and Derek Thomas. And we know how dominating of players they were. But so hopefully, because he had some demons, Skip, that weed wasn't involved. We know he got suspended. He failed a drug test and all that other stuff. But there are some things that happened outside of that we believe that there was something more heavily involved than marijuana. Now, with that being said, Skip, if it's hard for me to believe a guy can miss the amount of time that Aldon Smith has missed and come back and be dominant like he was. Skip, we saw Josh Gordon miss a year, and he was never the same. Can you imagine missing 4 years where you haven't been playing football? Skip, football probably was the furthest thing from his mind. He's trying to reconcile and get his life together. Hopefully, like Jay said, he's been clean the last 9 months. But Skip, it's just hard for me to believe. Skip, we remember when Michael Jordan took a year and a half off. Skip, that first year back, half a year back, Skip, he wasn't even close to being the Michael Jordan that we saw. And then he took the 3 years off. Now, mind you, he was later, he was 36, 37, 38 when he came back that second time, Skip. So we understand that Aldon Smith does have the element of age on his side. But Skip, you start missing time like that. Look at Tiger. When Tiger took that time off, how Tiger look? Yes, he could have spots and spells where he's dominant, but we haven't seen that dominant player. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he can recapture what he once was. Skip, remember now, he came out in that 2011 draft. We know that arguably is the greatest drafter ever because if you look at Cam went 1, Von Miller went 2, and Richard Sherman was in that draft, and J.J. Watt was in that draft, and Julio and A.J. Green. Skip, we know the names. Aldon Smith went 7 overall. So that tells you what the 49ers thought of him, and he was rewarding them handsomely until the demons got a hold of him and he couldn't get control of his life. So I really hope he turned that side of his life around and he can get back on the field, because I do believe he deserves a second chance, and hopefully he can cash in on that. But to answer your question, is this long shot going to work? Skip, if you really look at it, the only long shot that Jerry Jones has signed since he's on that team has worked is Charles Haley. You look at the Greg Lloyds and the Pac-Man Jones and all these other guys that he's signed, Skip, they haven't panned out. Haley panned out. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out.
Okay. You make too many good points. But I'm going to say, just barely, that I like this move. I'm going to say just barely, I believe this move will pay off for Jerry Jones and my Dallas Cowboys. And yet I'll be the first to admit to you, Shannon Sharp, maybe I'm as desperate for a pass rusher as they clearly are, because they hope to keep Robert Quinn, who was their number one sack artist last year, opposite DeMarcus Lawrence, who did not live up to his $100 million contract that he had just gotten going into last year. But they lost Robert Quinn because the Bears, I think, way overpaid for him, and there's no way Jerry Jones could even begin to compete with that kind of offer. So all of a sudden, there's a pretty gaping hole on the other side of the defensive line. So they went out and they got, obviously, Gerald McNeil and Dontari Poe, two very established, proven veterans that could anchor the middle of the line. They're much bigger players. They're more in the elephant range than anything Dallas had under Rod Marinelli. So they're saying, okay, we're going to anchor our defense against the run game. And both those guys can get to the passer on occasion. They're both up there in age, but they were both bargain basement steal of deals. And they're hoping DeMarcus Lawrence bounces back. And they said, okay, let's take a fairly low-risk money shot on an Aldon Smith for two reasons. And again, low-risk money because it's just $2 million base, which is not going to break the salary cap back of the Dallas Cowboys if he doesn't work out or if he doesn't contribute at all. So who am I betting on here? I'm betting on, number one, our man Jay Glazer and his assessment. And number two, Shannon, I'm betting on Jim Tom Sula, who was Aldon Smith's coach for his 4 years in San Francisco, his defensive line coach. And just recently, as you know, when they changed coaches, Mike McCarthy comes in, Mike Nolan is the defensive coordinator. They hired Jim Tom Sula to coach the Cowboy defensive line. And I'm pretty sure he had heavy input into this decision to bring back Aldon Smith, take a flyer on him, probably because Jim Tom Sula is vouching for his, just his football character, his heart, whatever. Jim probably knows this kid pretty to very well and said, I believe in his recovery. I believe he's been clean and sober for 9 months. And I believe there's still a lot left in that tank. So now to your point, Jerry Jones, as we know, Daddy Jerry, has always considered himself sort of the Father Flanagan of the National Football League. I can save the souls of these troubled players. And it started with, as you said, Charles Haley. I'll get to that in detail in just a moment. But as you recall, it's been Pac-Man Jones. It's been Tank Johnson. It's been Alonzo Spellman. It's been Greg Hardy. It's been Rolando McClain. It was Randy Gregory. Jerry took a second-round pick flyer on Randy Gregory, and he's had his moments, but he's now currently suspended and has filed for reinstatement. And I'm hoping Randy maybe has an even better chance of contributing than Aldon Smith does, because Randy Gregory, under the new CBA, I think Randy's issues were mostly marijuana. At least that's what I've been told. Don't know that for a fact. But if they're just marijuana, as you know, Shannon, the new CBA says you cannot be suspended for a positive marijuana test. Well, that was a big gain by the players. They lost in a lot of other ways, but they did win that one. So maybe the Cowboys will win because Randy Gregory will get reinstated, and maybe he can stay eligible under the new CBA if he continues to have marijuana, quote unquote, issues, or if he just wants to continue to smoke for whatever reason. So to me, if Jim Tomsula has vouched and Jay Glazer has vouched, and real quick, Shannon, before I give the ball back to you, Jay Glazer was the co-founder of a program called MVPs. It's merging vets and players, and it's veteran, war veterans who have struggled with psychological mental issues, have connected with pro football players having the same issues to try to figure out how to beat their demons together. So in that program, overseen by Jay Glazer, has been Aldon Smith. So Jay's got some particular insight into this situation, and Jay was so strong last night in his tweets, so adamant that Aldon Smith has found himself and at least is holding off his demons as we speak, that I'm saying, okay, worth a shot, and maybe it is a fairy tale storybook sort of turnaround story, because Aldon Smith then posted on Instagram a picture of him signing the deal and saying that he's blessed and thankful to be a Dallas Cowboy. So I'm going to say I'm barely good with this move, and I do think it might pay off a little bit, if not a lot. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Skip. The reason why they made this move is that they lost Robert Quinn, and they thought they could get Robert Quinn back on a similar deal in which they signed him the first year. They gave him probably about $8 million. But when Chicago came in and swooped in and gave him $70 million, about $30 million fully guaranteed, there was no way they were going to be able to compete with that. And plus, Chicago have Khalil Mack on the other side. They needed someone when Khalil Mack could get